Vivian was told to sleep in the freezing garage because she was the family failure, but what they didn't know, she just bought the company they all worked for. And on Christmas morning, she changed everything. They made her sleep next to the Christmas decorations, in a freezing storage room, because in their eyes, she was just the failed little sister. But what they didn't know was that she owned the company they all worked for. This is the story of Vivian Blake, a woman who chose silence over shouting, grace over revenge, until one morning she walked into the boardroom and changed everything. Welcome to Sweet Revenge Happy Ending, where justice isn't loud, but powerful. If you've ever been underestimated, this story is for you. I never expected a warm welcome, but I didn't expect to be banished to the storage room either. The Blake family Christmas in Atlanta had always been a spectacle. Red and gold everywhere, candles that smelled like cinnamon and control, and Samantha's voice carrying over everyone else's, rehearsed and radiant. She greeted me with a half hug, then pulled away like she might catch whatever underachievement she imagined I still carried. "You made it," she said, her smile not quite touching her eyes. "You drove all the way from... Where is it you live now? Decatur?" "Midtown," I replied, pulling off my scarf. "It's not far." "Right," she nodded absently. "Mom said you still have that little Honda." Still, as if it were a disease I hadn't managed to cure. I smiled. "It runs." Inside, my parents were bustling like they were hosting the governor. The guest room, of course, was already occupied. Samantha's old high school friend, now 7 months pregnant, had flown in from Dallas with her husband. Somehow this took priority over the actual daughter. "Vivian," Mom said sweetly but firmly, "we set up a cot for you in the storage room next to the garage. It's heated, mostly." Mostly. I glanced at Dad, who avoided my eyes, stirring his bourbon like he was solving national security. Samantha stood behind Mom, her hands clasped, her pearl earrings catching the light like punctuation marks to her perfection. "We just didn't want to rearrange everything for one night," Mom continued. "Samantha flew in from San Francisco, and she needs the upstairs guest suite to rest before her board meeting with Mr. Ross tomorrow." Ah, Mr. Ross, the revered CEO of Vanguard Atlas, and Samantha's golden ticket boss. He was joining us for Christmas dinner, which, in our house, ranked higher than church, higher than Santa, and definitely higher than my presence. "It's fine," I said quietly. "Really." I followed Mom through the hallway, past the manicured living room and down the back stairs to the storage room, where an old army cot sat wedged between dusty boxes of wrapping paper, Dad's bowling trophies, and something that might have once been a treadmill. A small space heater hummed in the corner, its orange light flickering like it knew this wasn't enough. Mom placed a thin fleece blanket on the cot and gave me a smile as brittle as the tinsel in her hair. "We figured you wouldn't mind," she said. "You've always been low maintenance." She left before I could respond. I sat on the cot, my breath already visible in the stale December air. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. 3 emails, all marked urgent. I didn't need to open them to know what they were about. The final signature for the NovaCore acquisition, the one that would reshape an entire industry. The one Donovan Ross didn't know was being approved by the woman currently freezing her ass off in a storage room in Atlanta. I chuckled softly. They still saw me as the underachiever, the quirky one who didn't take the corporate path, who once lived off ramen and coffee while building something they couldn't begin to comprehend. For 5 years, I let them believe I was a broke adjunct professor with too many ideals and not enough common sense. Tomorrow, that illusion would end. I pulled the fleece over my legs, leaned back on the cot, and stared at the ceiling. The air smelled like old cedar and a hint of disappointment, but I was warm enough. I'd been through worse, and this time I had an empire behind me. They just didn't know it yet. I didn't sleep much that night, not because of the cold, though let's be clear, the little heater in the corner gave off about as much warmth as a candle in a wind tunnel. But it wasn't the temperature that kept me awake, it was the irony. Every buzz from my phone felt like the universe poking me with a stick, reminding me of just how surreal this was. On paper, I was the ghost CEO of NovaCore Holdings, the woman behind a dozen billion-dollar acquisitions, the phantom strategist who made CEOs flinch when they heard my name in boardrooms. In reality, at least to my family, I was just Vivian the almost professor, curled up next to a broken vacuum and a box of Halloween decorations. I pulled out my phone at 1:13 a.m., 3 new emails, all labeled critical, board needs final go-ahead, the final green light on the Vanguard Atlas integration, Samantha's company. I opened the email from Leo, my chief of staff. Leo Kingsley, Novacore HQ. Donovan Ross is asking again to speak with you personally before the shareholder call. He says it's urgent. Should I continue to delay? I smirked. Donovan Ross, Samantha's polished, big-talking boss, had been trying for 3 months to arrange a sit-down with me. He didn't know my name, only my title, Novacore CEO. He'd sent gift baskets, handwritten notes, even called Leo's assistant offering to fly to Zurich, Tokyo, anywhere I wanted, just for 15 minutes. And tonight? He was less than 25 feet away, sleeping in the guest suite, completely unaware that the woman he'd been chasing was lying on a military cot beneath him. I typed back, "Let him wait. Tell him I'm still in Switzerland and won't return until the board meeting concludes. We'll talk tomorrow morning." I paused, then added, "And move the meeting to 8 a.m. Eastern. I'll join in person." Leo replied instantly, "Copy that. Should I notify legal?" "Not yet," I typed. "Let's make tomorrow memorable." I tossed the phone beside me and lay back, staring at the ceiling again. I used to dream about moments like this. Not out of pettiness, though I'd be lying if I said there wasn't some satisfaction in the poetic symmetry, but more out of clarity. It was like watching a full circle draw itself around years of being dismissed, pitied, and second-guessed. I remembered the job interview I faked, the second-hand blazer I wore to family dinners, the time I let Samantha mock my tiny apartment while sitting on a couch that I owned, because I owned the building. It had all been part of the plan, not revenge, just control. Now, with one signature, I was about to take ownership of the company my sister thought she ran. She had no idea that her promotion last month had been reviewed, by me. That the restructuring she bragged about was bleeding money, and I'd been watching it closely, waiting for the right moment. And oh, tomorrow would be that moment. As I closed my eyes, a car horn honked faintly outside, probably someone heading home from a Christmas Eve shift. The world kept turning, and so did the balance of power. Let them all rest easy tonight, because when the sun rose, so would I. If Christmas dinner were a performance, then Samantha had always played the lead. She sat at the center of the long mahogany table, her emerald dress hugging just tight enough to say powerful without crossing into trying too hard. Donovan Ross, her boss and self-proclaimed visionary, was seated to her right, wineglass in one hand, charm switched on full volume. I was at the far end of the table. So far, in fact, I may as well have been dining from the kitchen counter. "You know," Samantha said, carefully dabbing her mouth with a linen napkin, "working at Vanguard Atlas has been life-changing. We've just closed our best quarter in 5 years, and now with the Novacore merger, the opportunities are endless." My fork paused mid-air. Donovan beamed. "Samantha's being modest. Her operational restructuring saved us millions. Honestly, she's been a standout through this entire acquisition." I sipped my wine and smiled politely. The millions saved number was generous, especially considering the audit I'd reviewed last week that showed the opposite. But hey, what's a few decimal points among friends? Mom leaned in. "It's just such a blessing. We were so worried when that big private firm bought them out. But now, we can sleep easy knowing Samantha's still shining." "Novacore," Uncle Jeff chimed in. "That's the one, right? No one even knows who runs it. Some ghost billionaire, if you believe the rumors." Samantha grinned, clearly enjoying her moment. "Apparently she, yes, it's a she, is extremely private. Never shows up at conferences. Doesn't take interviews. My team says she might be living in Switzerland or maybe Dubai." "Or maybe," I murmured, "she just prefers not to be seen by people who only respect what they can Google." Samantha glanced down the table. "Sorry, what was that, Viv?" "Nothing," I said, placing my glass down. "Please, continue." Donovan chuckled. "Whoever she is, I'd sure like 5 minutes with her. Our team's been trying to lock down a meeting for weeks." I bit my tongue, hard. It was like watching people dissect a painting, having no idea the artist was standing right beside them. They talked about me like I was a myth, a theory, a ghost in designer heels. never suspecting the woman cutting turkey at the far end of the table was the one who signed their checks. "You know what's really sad?" Samantha said suddenly, turning toward me with a smile sharpened like a blade. "Some people just never find their footing, like they have all this potential and end up teaching night classes." Mom chuckled, not even pretending to disagree. "Vivian, you're still at that community college, right? Teaching creative writing?" "Just one class per semester," I replied. "I like giving back." Samantha's eyes glinted. "That's adorable. Meanwhile, we're building industries." I returned the smile. "And some of us are buying them." Donovan raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "Nothing," Samantha cut in quickly. "Vivian has a flair for metaphors. It's why she teaches." The laughter around the table felt like velvet over a bruise, polite but pointed. As the dessert plates came out and Samantha launched into a story about a private yacht tour her team took after Q3 wrapped, I checked my phone under the table. Another message from Leo. "Confirmed. All department heads will attend the 8 o'clock a.m. briefing. Donovan is still unaware." I looked up at Donovan and Samantha, both now basking in compliments and brandy. They had no idea the clock was ticking. Tomorrow morning I wouldn't be at the end of the table, I'd be at the head of the room, and I wouldn't need dessert to steal the spotlight. The boardroom at Vanguard Atlas was made of glass and steel, clean, sharp, cold, just like their culture. I arrived at 7:48 a.m., wearing a tailored navy pantsuit and low heels. Nothing flashy, nothing dramatic, just enough presence to own the space without having to raise my voice. My assistant, Leo, had prepped the room. The board packets sat at each seat. The company logo was projected against the wall. Next to it, a smaller one, Novacor Holdings. I stood by the window, watching Atlanta's skyline light up with the morning sun, when the door opened. Samantha walked in first. She was mid-laugh, holding a latte, dressed in an outfit that screamed, "I'm in control." Donovan Ross followed right behind, still scrolling through his phone, barking into his AirPods. "Tell them I haven't received final word from Novacor's execs yet," he muttered. "We're flying blind unless we hear from this phantom CEO before the end of the meeting." He didn't look up as he passed me. Samantha finally glanced my way, confused for half a second. Then her face hardened. "What are you doing here, Vivian?" she asked, voice tight. "I'm here for the meeting," I said calmly. Donovan frowned. "You're on the teaching team or something?" I smiled. "No, I'm on the executive team." They both blinked. Samantha's jaw twitched. "Wait, you're consulting for Novacor now?" I walked to the head of the table and placed my hand on the chair. "I'm not consulting," I said, then paused. "I am Novacor." Donovan laughed. "I'm sorry, what?" I nodded to the screen. My assistant, waiting outside, tapped the control. The projector shifted to a high-resolution ID badge, my photo, my name, and below it, Vivian Blake, founder and CEO, Novacor Holdings. For a few seconds, no one moved. Then came the inevitable. "You've got to be kidding," Samantha whispered. Donovan turned pale. You're the Vivian Blake?" "Yes," I said. "I've reviewed every department under this company for the last year, including operations." Samantha stumbled back a step. "But that's impossible. You don't even have an MBA. You drive a Honda." I couldn't help it. I laughed. "I own the building where I park that Honda, and the company that just bought yours." Donovan sank into a chair, rubbing his temple like he was trying to erase the last 60 seconds. "You've been watching us?" "Monitoring, strategizing, cleaning up inefficiencies." I looked at Samantha. "Like the restructuring you did that cost us $4.2 million in lost productivity. I let it run to see how you'd handle feedback. You didn't." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I turned to the board members entering behind them, one by one freezing as they saw me at the head of the table. Their eyes darted from Samantha to Donovan to the screen behind me. "Let's begin," I said. "We'll start with a brief review of the merger fallout, then move into accountability." I could feel the weight of silence settle around me like a crown. They had spent a year guessing who the Novacor CEO was. She had been standing in the corner of their lives the entire time. Now she had stepped into the center, and she wasn't hiding anymore. The silence after I said, "Let's begin," was more deafening than any explosion. Donovan stared blankly at the table like the wood grain might offer a way out. Samantha, usually poised, polished, all press release confidence, sat frozen, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had gone white. I didn't gloat. I didn't raise my voice. I simply did what real leaders do. I delivered the facts. Page 4 of your board packet, I said, my tone measured. Let's talk about the Q4 operational losses, specifically the restructuring that was led in full by your Vice President of Operations. Samantha. A quiet rustle of papers swept across the room. This report was flagged for multiple inefficiencies, I continued. Staff turnover tripled in 3 departments. Project timelines fell behind by an average of 16 days. Vendor costs ballooned without renegotiation. And there was a luxury vehicle charged to the company's general expense account, filed as transportation consulting. I looked directly at Samantha. Unless Mercedes-Benz started offering executive coaching, I'd say that's a misuse of funds. She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. That was cleared by my department head, she mumbled. I raised an eyebrow. You are the department head. A wave of uncomfortable shuffling circled the table. Donovan finally spoke. Look, I had no idea. If we had known who you were. That's the point, Mr. Ross, I cut in, my voice now steel beneath the calm. You didn't bother to know. You chased titles. You hosted dinners. You whispered about a CEO you'd never met, while she sat at your dinner table carving turkey like a second-class guest. I turned slightly, not for drama, but for finality. This isn't about revenge, it's about accountability. Samantha's voice cracked. You're going to fire me, aren't you? I paused. No, I said quietly. I'm going to do what should have been done years ago. I'm going to hold you accountable. You'll step back from your position effective immediately, pending review and internal audit. If you cooperate, your reputation might recover. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't look away. I couldn't. Not after all the years of being spoken over, laughed at, dismissed. Across the table, Donovan shifted. And me? You'll stay, for now, I said. Under probation and under watch. If you'd like to submit your resignation after this meeting, we'll process it discreetly. He nodded slowly. Understood. I turned to the rest of the boardroom. This company cannot continue operating under a culture that rewards ego and ignores integrity. Novacor didn't acquire Vanguard just to expand. We did it to transform. That starts now. I let that hang in the air for a moment. No one argued. After the meeting adjourned, Samantha walked toward me in the hallway, mascara smudged, heels clicking slower than usual. You planned this, she whispered. This whole Christmas, the dinner, the reveal. No, I said, pulling on my coat. I planned to visit home. The reveal? That was yours to uncover. You just never bothered to look. I walked past her, the weight of her judgment finally gone. Not because I had crushed it, but because I had outgrown it. At the elevator, my phone buzzed again. A message from Leo. 4 Seasons suite is ready. Flight to Maui departs tonight. Do you want the jet fueled? I smiled. Let's fuel it, I replied. I'm done cleaning up this mess. It's time for the next move. By the time I left the Vanguard building, the December air felt different. It wasn't warmer. Atlanta was still brisk and gray, the kind of chill that clings to your skin. But I wasn't cold anymore, not in the way that mattered. I climbed into my Honda, yes, the same car they'd mocked, the same one Samantha once called tragic. Still spotless, still reliable, kind of like me. My phone buzzed nonstop as I pulled out of the parking garage. Voicemails from Mom, texts from Dad, a long, rambling email from Samantha titled, "Can we talk?" I didn't open any of them. Instead, I turned onto Peachtree Street and kept driving north. Past the old neighborhood, past the family diner where I used to bus tables in high school, past the library where I wrote the first business plan for Novacor on the back of a printout I couldn't afford to copy twice. And finally, past the glass tower with my name etched into the foundation discreetly but permanently. But I pulled into the circular drive of the Four Seasons, handed the valet my keys, and walked through the marble lobby like I belonged, because I did. Suite 3701 was waiting. So was the silence. Not the heavy, suffocating kind I'd grown up with, filled with disappointment and subtle digs. This silence was soft, intentional, Mine. I dropped my bag, kicked off my shoes, and poured a glass of wine. The view stretched out over all of Atlanta. Tiny dots of life moving below me, unaware that the woman in this room had just dismantled the illusions of an entire boardroom with 6 words. I am Novacor, let's begin. The next morning, I didn't rush. I let the light find its way through the curtains on its own. At 10 a.m., I taught my online creative writing class, the one I never gave up. My students didn't know they were learning from a CEO. I didn't care if they ever did. What mattered was they wrote, and I gave them room to become more than what others expected. At noon, I reviewed an acquisition offer from a robotics firm in Copenhagen. At 1:30, I approved a new maternity policy across all Novacor companies, full paid leave, 12 months. I thought about Sarah in accounting, the woman Samantha had denied time off. Not anymore. By evening, I was packed. The jet would take off at 6:15, bound for Maui. I wasn't running from anything. I was simply moving, forward, upward, freely. As I passed the mirror on the way out, I caught my own reflection. Hair pulled back, eyes steady, no apology, no disguise. This was me, entirely. Just before boarding, Leo called. "They're asking if you'll be home for Christmas next year," he said carefully. "Your family." I looked out the jet window. "Maybe," I said, "if they don't mind sleeping in the storage room." He laughed, but I meant every word. Let them learn what modest accommodations feel like. Let them taste the quiet. Because while they were busy looking down on me, I was building an empire. And now, I was finally ready to live in it. They laughed at her apartment, they mocked her car, they pitied her teaching job. But while they were busy judging, Vivian was building an empire, on her terms. She didn't scream, she didn't fight back, she just waited, for the moment when truth would speak louder than anything they ever said. Because the sweetest revenge is proving they were wrong without ever saying a word. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's quietly working on their own breakthrough. And remember, success doesn't need permission, it just needs time and a good storage room story.